Welcome to the Creator's Adventure, where we interview creators from around the world hearing their stories about growing a business. Mindfulness is a popular topic, and you hear something like the mindfulness program at Google, but do you ever wonder who actually created that? Well, today we're talking with him, and he spent the first 10 years of his career at the first Western Zen monastery, only after that to go and found 3 successful businesses. Hey everyone, I'm Brian McAnulty, the founder of Heights Platform. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, we're here today with Marc Lesser. He is a CEO, executive coach, speaker, and Zen teacher. He founded and was CEO of 3 companies and helped develop a mindfulness program inside of Google's headquarters. He is the author of 5 books, including Finding Clarity, and Marc was a resident of the San Francisco Zen Center for 10 years and has an MBA from New York University. Marc, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. Good to see you.
You as well. So, my first question for you is what would you say is the biggest thing, either that you did or you are doing, that has helped you to achieve the freedom to do what you enjoy?
Yeah, I feel like I've been really lucky in my work life in that there's been tremendous amount of alignment in that I've always done things that were very much aligned with my own values.
Mm.
My first job out of business school was with a recycled paper company, and then I launched a publishing company making things out of recycled paper, and we were selling and producing beautiful calendars and greeting cards that had inspirational messages. So I think the big thing I think is to if you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work. I've rarely felt like I've worked very much in my life, and that's true these days as well.
That's awesome. I think I completely agree. That's super important, and that's super awesome to be able to go through that process of having everything be like that for you. Um, like yeah, for me, I would say the same. I'm very glad, and I feel very fortunate that what I do every day, I would do the same exact thing if I didn't have to do it for money.
Yeah, I would also add to that. Uh, I think that I think it really helps to contextualize one's work as part of their own, whether it's well-being practice or spiritual practice or awareness practice. That because as I was talking so eloquently about the things that I loved, I couldn't help think of that there were some really tough times in there.
Mm.
That man, there were some real struggles, financial issues, changes in the environment issues, people issues. Running a business is not for the faint of heart. And so uh, even though I was always doing things that I loved, man, I didn't always love the challenges and struggles, and always easier looking back. But it always helped, I think, to, as I said, to see even the challenges and difficulties as opportunities to learn and grow, even though even no one wants to have financial challenges. No one wants to you know look at your customer list and there was a I can remember the moment when I was uh, noticed that our customers were going out of business left and right because they were getting beaten up by Amazon and Borders
Mm.
and Barnes and Noble at the time, and that was put us in some. We had to change. We had to pivot. We had to change directions in order to survive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely agree that when you're working on something that you're passionate about and that aligns with your values, it's much easier to make it through those hard times. And
Hmm.
yeah, it would be so much harder, if not impossible, if you don't feel that way about what you're doing.
For sure. For sure.
So you were a resident of the San Francisco Zen Center for 10 years. the director of Tasajara Zen Mountain Center, the first Zen monastery in the Western world. Can you describe your experience in the Zen Mountain Center? Like, what was it like being a resident in a monastery? What did you learn from that experience?
Yeah. Um, this it was for me. This was I was in my early 20s. I took a 1 year leave of absence from Rutgers University. I was 20, 21 years old, and was found out about um, meditation practice and this community in San Francisco called the Zen Center, and it was there was something, just a lot of really smart, interesting, devoted people living in community, and yet there was this real discipline of getting up. 5:30 a.m. every morning was meditation practice, and there was so to me it was the draw was having this physical discipline, studying, work, and I ended up working in a lot of different areas. I mean, I got trained as a baker, I got trained as a cook, and then I felt like I got a lot of leadership experience I was asked to be the director of this Zen monastery, but it turns into a kind of a conference center, workshop center with overnight guests all summer. So just amazing experience looking back at it, and of course, was not so easy for my parents. Me dropping out of college and spending my time at the Zen Center, but much easier after 10 years when I went to business school and started my own company. But then it was interesting how it was that experience that led to me being asked to develop a mindfulness meditation emotional intelligence program in Google headquarters. So it's interesting sometimes the things that look kind of, looking back, it was pretty risky, pretty crazy
Mm.
but I mean, I was just following my heart. I was following my own path then. But it was interesting how well it turned out for me in terms of what it led to, in terms of the opportunities, the doors that it opened. But it was a life-changing experience, and I'm surprised at my own choices. You know, sometimes it seems like there's a thin line, between courage and not exactly stupidity, but just a lack of awareness. A lack.
Mm.
I wasn't even thinking of the risks at the time. It was just something I was really drawn to do. Um, I'm still actually quite connected to all these years to the San Francisco Zen Center community. Great organization, really good people. This place, Tassajara, is an amazing place. It's deep in the mountains in Central California, and I think starting again next summer, it'll be open again to the public in the summer times.
That's neat. Yeah, I'm not sure how accurate this is, but at least my impression is that it's more often common for someone to be in business and go through all these things and say, I really need to kind of chill out and get out of the stress, and then they go to the monastery. And you kind of went the other way around. You're at the monastery for 10 years, and then you decided, well, I'm going to now have these businesses.
Totally. No, I think my particular order of things was a lot more unusual. Um, Most of the people, yeah, I think very few people who went through what I did ended up in the business world. It would have been much more, I think, made a lot more sense for me to. And I thought about becoming a doctor. I thought about going to becoming a therapist, but I was really drawn. I was really drawn to the realm of leadership and to business. I wanted to have to contend with success and failure. I
Mm.
wanted to have to contend with really creating a livelihood by myself, and I was really drawn to the realm of leading, managing and leading, which I had. a good deal of experience with while at the Zen Center, and and I remember wondering, like, why isn't everyone integrating kind of these awareness practices, emotional intelligence practices in with leadership? And I think I was a bit ahead of my time,
Mm,
um, and because it's amazing now how much interest there is in all, leadership and mindfulness and meditation, and um, yeah, I feel quite lucky that I had that deep and long experience as a young person.
definitely. Yeah. So now, as the CEO of ZBA Associates, you mentioned you work with Google. I think you worked with Twitter as well. What kind of services would you provide a company like that?
Yeah, I do. My work life now is some executive coaching. So I work with CEOs of smaller companies. I work with some Google executives and other leaders, and I do some speaking. I do some talks at places, and I do workshops, trainings around mindful leadership, emotional intelligence, accomplishing more by doing less is another workshop that I do. I love the combination. I like working one on one with people, but I also really like working with groups, being with, helping to create safe, vibrant learning, uh, um, kind of learning situations for people. So yeah, that's my work life these days, and I have a small team of people. I have a variety of contractors that I work with, but I'm mostly these days a one person business. I sometimes miss, I've been CEO of a few different companies now that where I've had teams and was growing organizations, and uh, I miss that. And I have to say, I also like the simplicity of my work life right now.
Mm, got it. Yeah, I think it's an interesting point that you made about enjoying working like with both the one-on-one and the groups. And I think it's a mistake or rather distraction that a lot of earlier entrepreneurs will make to think that there's like one right answer of like, oh, this is the way that I will be more successful. I have to work with people in this format. But there's so many ways you can do things, and I think it really, for the most part, comes down to what you personally enjoy. And so I'm also saying this thinking in from the mind of like coaches and course creators who are thinking like, oh, should I have a membership? Some people are telling me that's really cool. Should I have a course? Should I do this coaching, these workshops? And yeah, I really think it comes down to, well, what is it that you enjoy and what is it that you you like to use to provide value to your audience?
Totally, totally. I have a lot of friends who are coaches and only do coaching, and I sometimes look and think, man, that looks like a really good life. But I I've never felt like that was my path. I love coaching, but I really need to be doing group work as well. And I know a lot of people who just do group work and doesn't interest them to do the one-on-one work. I really I like both, and I also like, I like strategizing and growing things and trying things as well. I feel like for me to be happy, I need to feel somewhat engaged in all three of those areas: the one-on-one, the group work, and the sense that I'm trying things and building out something.
Yeah, that's neat, and I think it's great. It's great for anyone to be able to get to the point that they even realize that for themselves
Mhm,
of what are those things
mhm.
that they need for feeling fulfillment in their business.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes I was thinking in my last role as CEO of an organization. It took it took some work and some time and some patience to be able to build the company and my particular role where I could do all three of those things. I feel like the in some way, as we were growing, it made it didn't make sense for me to be out there in the field doing trainings because there was so much that needed to be done in terms of building a team and keeping an eye on the financials. And but once we got stable, I felt like I was able to then arrange my time and tasks to do more what suited me. But sometimes you have to make sacrifices. Sometimes you have to do things that might not be that fit when, especially when you're responsible for growing a company.
Yeah, definitely. So, my teammates saw when we were doing our research on you that in a keynote speech you mentioned how the principles of non-attainment that you learned from the Zen monastery often collide with the corporate work culture of productivity and therefore attainment. So, how can business owners and leaders kind of incorporate mindfulness into their work routine while still being productive?
Yeah, so it's interesting, even something as maybe simple as like let's if I use the the metaphor of meditation practice, that there's definitely something that brings you to want to have a meditation practice or a mindfulness practice. It might be you want to reduce stress or be a whatever it is, a better leader, a better parent, more aware. But then the practice itself is when you're actually doing meditation, you let go of all that and you train. And there's a training of training the mind to be satisfied with what is and to be aware of whatever is without any sense of attainment. And I think this is actually a really important leadership skill,
Mm.
to be able you know, to start by seeing what is happening in your business, what is working, how are the people I'm working with doing. So it's like this. So there's a kind of an acceptance, a sense of just more open awareness, and then out of that saying, well, here's where I want my business to be. Here's where I want my team to be. Here's my financial goals, the various goals that I have, and to notice the gaps between what is and what I want to be. There's a lot of people have written about the importance of seeing those gaps. Peter Senge, in a book from about 30 years ago called "The Fifth Discipline," uh, he talks about how that it might be the most important skill or quality of a leader is feeling the discomfort and staying with the discomfort of the gaps between what is and what you want to be. And I think it helps to have a meditation practice, mindfulness practice, a non-attainment practice, to actually be able to see those gaps and stay with them. Because usually we don't like those. Usually we pretend they're not there, or we lower the bar of where we want to be. Because who wants to be uncomfortable? But there's something about staying with the discomfort of being in those gaps as whatever kind of work we're doing, whatever kind of business we're running.
Yeah, I agree. And it sounds so simple to say, like, seeing where things are at, but I can also understand, and I feel that so many entrepreneurs and business owners skip right over that, and they just focus into like, oh, let's go, 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 like this is what we want to do, and not really even realizing or paying attention to kind of the current reality.
Yeah.
I think like another way to kind of talk about that is the like as an entrepreneur, I think you constantly make discoveries about like everyone has these beliefs, and you constantly make discoveries about, well, what is the real reality behind this
Hmm.
as you
Hmm.
move forward. And you have to, I think, kind of like as you're getting at maybe with the discomfort, like be able to sit with that reality once you discover what the reality really is and how it's different from your belief, and then use that to understand where you have to get to instead of just ignoring it and then pushing forward with some idea.
Yeah, no, totally. Well said, right? I think there's something about, you know, seeing reality from a number of perspectives. I mean, even simple things like, regularly reviewing your financials and having, and how useful it is, how obvious and useful it is to have financial projections and to make it a habit to be looking at projections versus reality. And even projections about, a little bit like what we were talking about earlier about what roles am I, what do I want to be doing, what are my, what activities, how am I spending my time, how do I spend my time, and where do I want to spend my time, and how can I close those gaps. But it means, again and again, coming back to what is, right, what is, from financials, how I'm spending my time, how are my vendors doing? How are people doing who work with me? What's working? What could be better?
Yeah. Yeah, I wanna talk more about the like spending the time because I think that the average entrepreneur spends all this time doing things that are not really work and you're just kind of busy. And most people, I think, would be further along to where they want to be, not by working more, but by just creating these blocks of focus time for themselves where they're working on what is actually either that they believe is going to move the needle or that they are best fit to work on. So, what would you say is maybe like if you could reference a specific practice or technique that can help somebody prioritize tasks and eliminate just kind of unnecessary busyness?
Yeah, again, it's similar, I think, to what we were just saying. It could be really, really helpful to do an audit, to spend, for a week or 2 weeks to, the end of the morning and end of the afternoon to actually really look at how are you spending your time? What are you doing? I'm amazed at, you know, the differences in productivity, to really look at, you know, I think for most people, in an 8-hour day, how much of that time are you actually producing things? Are you actually getting things done? Are you actually selling or planning or creating? It can be really eye opening to really look at those things in a really very straightforward way. So I think again, it's clearly my bias, right? The bias of awareness. I keep bringing awareness to what is, and and also I think there's an emotional component to it. How am I feeling? Like how's it? How's this working for me? What gives me energy? Noticing what gives me energy, because that's I think, we're so much more productive when we're energized, when we're engaged, and often so much less productive when there's some kind of resistance or any kind of lack of clarity about what we're doing. Um, I mean, yeah, just again to keep bringing that awareness to I'd say both the what and the how, um, and the why is also right, to that stepping back about why am I doing this? What is this? What's the larger context of what I'm trying to accomplish here?
Yeah, that's helpful. And I can attest to the kind of like audit thing because when I started in business, I didn't really keep track of how long I was working. I don't think I was really like working like crazy or at risk of really burning myself out, but I would just kind of work and that was it. And and there wasn't really any data for me to understand like what am I actually getting done or not. And nowadays I actually time like to the minute like the time that I spend working. And
Hmm.
it wasn't that hard to get into a habit of doing it. I try to work 8 hours on weekdays, but doing that is really helpful to understand like when am I doing something away from work that I'm distracted. I think like I work from home and being able to understand like if I'm taking a break in the middle of the day or something like that, it's helpful to understand like, oh, I only worked 3 hours so far today. I got to do more. But also from things like realizing like, wow, I almost worked 8 hours today, but what actually got done?
Right. Yeah. As you were saying that, Brian, it made me think of when I was CEO of my last company, I instituted a policy, an open vacation policy.
Mm,
And I was a little nervous about that, like, because it means it's a kind of, it means you really have to trust people. But what I didn't realize is that what it meant was that what became important was what got done, not how much time you spent doing it. So I didn't care how many hours people worked. What I cared about was what was getting accomplished. And then the same became true of me also. I had to track myself. Like what was I really accomplishing? So it's interesting, as you were saying, it can certainly be useful, to audit time. It definitely matters, but it's also really interesting to find ways to be auditing accomplishment and to really note, like, have a way of measuring what's gotten done. What's my plan? What's my plan for this day, for this week? What does a successful week look like in terms of accomplishment? And then how'd I do?
yeah, yeah, 100%. And I'll do that as well to kind of plan out like these are the things that I want to get done for myself, for my team over the course of this week, and then the rest of how many hours are involved is not so important. So I agree with that, and I agree with the open vacation policy too. We do that as well here, so that's great.
It also makes me think of, there is something about, this is where I find I'm a lot more productive when I'm working with other people.
Mm,
In fact, I saw some study recently about, like, just having another person in the room, or can actually, most people are a lot more productive.
mm,
One way that shows up for me is, I just recently published my fifth book, and and often people say, "Wow, how do you do that? That just seems so crazy. And how do you write books?" Well, the way I do it is I hire an editor, and I make promises about when I'm going to have him certain things.
mm.
And I would never be able to get a book done if I didn't have someone who I was promising that on this date, I'm going to have you the introduction, the draft of the introduction, the draft of these. And that way, little by little, I can, by making promises, I can do things that would otherwise seem impossible.
Yeah, I completely agree with that as well. I think most of our audience listening here might think of themselves as kind of like the solo entrepreneur, and I think that's great, to be that and to aspire to be that and not want to have this massive team. But at the same time, you don't have to like do that and like suffer through that as a badge of honor, because it can be so helpful to have somebody that you're working with, even if it's one person, an assistant or whatever. But I find the same thing to be true in my business, that having the teammates is, even though I'm the boss, it's holding me accountable to, well, I said we were going to get this thing done. I got to make sure that this is ready, and then you find a way.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I think there's not a lot of research or studies about that because it's hard to
Mm.
research. There's so many variables, but my own experience is just how useful it is to, right, have accountability. People that right, even as the boss, that still, making promises, being able to hold myself accountable for what I'm actually getting done.
Yeah. Yeah. So your newest book, it's called Finding Clarity. And in that, you discuss compassionate accountability. Can you tell us what is compassionate accountability and how can that be integrated into your workplace?
Yeah, I started writing this book because of I noticed the word accountability gets used a lot, and mostly people don't like it, and I think what comes up as an association is lack of accountability,
Mm,
and mostly what makes the business news is, people doing strange things, the opposite of accountability. Um, and I really wanted to understand this practice. And I came to really like the word alignment. And much of accountability is so holding yourself accountable means being aligned with your, again, a lot like what we were talking about in terms of values and vision and productivity. And holding others accountable is a kind of alignment, right? And simply aligned in doing what people said they were going to do, working how we said we were going to work. And I think people like alignment. And alignment is much closer to, you know, compassion or care, right? So I'm a big fan of the importance of contradiction and paradox. I think we humans are naturally paradoxical and contradictory creatures. And but I think in the world of work, having high accountability, high alignment, and at the same time high sense of care and trust and compassion go together are really really important. Are like they look like they are in competing with each other, but I think they're essential that they go together. This practice is of accountability and compassion in our work lives.
Yeah, it's great. I don't know if it's just that you explained it so well, but I feel that I see a picture of that, and I can definitely understand that. Can you provide maybe some practical tips for anyone who's listening to this and is saying to themselves like, okay, well, this all sounds great. How can I kind of create a more peaceful work environment for myself and everyone I'm working with?
Yeah. Well, my advice is to start with yourself, right? That I think I think to look at uh, how to have really good well-being, self-care practices, but also communication skills to work on those. I think we all can be better communicators. The first chapter of my book, Finding Clarity, is called "Be Curious, Not Furious," and I think I see curiosity and listening as just, again, they sound so easy and simple, but in the rough and tumble business world, when things get heated up, when things are not working well, stuff happens. And I think instead of getting tight, instead of getting, noticing one's own fight and flight tendencies that we all have, uh, and even to be curious about our own dissatisfaction, our anger, our judgment, and to build those muscles of curiosity as the heart of being a better leader, a better communicator.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. All right. Usually, what we like to do on this show is have every guest ask a question to the audience. So, if you could think of anything that you could ask our audience, whether it's something you're curious about, something that you kind of want everyone to think about, what would that be?
Yeah, I think business is all about helping. It's all about an offering. So my question would be how are you and your work helping to make the world a better place? What are you doing to make the world even a little bit better?
That's a great question. I think the answer to that is a great kind of motivational driver for yourself as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good to keep coming back again, that it's a little bit like the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? And to get out of the weed. It's easy to get stuck in the weeds of the day-to-day challenges of running a company.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how it comes across to anyone listening to this that if it sounds like I have it all together, but I get stuck in the weeds often as well, still, no matter what. So definitely, it's important to continuously work at. All right, Mark. Well, it was great talking with you. Thanks so much for coming on. Before we get going, where else can people find you online?
Yeah, my website is Marc Lesser, MarcLesser.net. I also have a podcast called Zen Bones. Those are two ways people can find me.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Brian.